Just like in the English language, the German language has multiple tenses, and of course, multiple past tenses. One of them is called das Perfekt. So das Perfekt, or let's call it perfect tense, basically refers to an action that happened in the past, but still influences the present. You could say it's similar to the present perfect tense in English. So what is the present perfect tense in English? That's when you would say, for example, I have learned German 4 or 5 years, so have learned. Or you would say something like, since my childhood, I have loved eating apples, so have loved. In German, it's similar, but the thing is that we use it a lot in spoken language instead of written language. So you remember, for example, the present perfect tense in English, you would build or form with have or has and the past participle. So the past participle form of the verb. In German, building the perfect, you use either the verb haben, which means to have, or sein, which means to be. And then you also add the what we call Partizip zwei. So for example, if I have the infinitive schlafen, which means to sleep, and I use the first person singular to form the perfect, I would say ich habe geschlafen. Yeah? So it's pretty similar if you translate it to I have slept. And then I can keep on going. Second person singular, du hast geschlafen. Third person singular, hat geschlafen. So of course I have to conjugate haben here. So I have to know how to conjugate that. But you see that the Partizip zwei is always the same. Yeah, so I'm using GE before the infinitive in that case. But for all persons, it's the same, geschlafen. Laufen, for example, you form it with a form of sein, to be. So, ich bin gelaufen. Du bist gelaufen. Er ist gelaufen. So again, here I have to conjugate my word sein. And gelaufen is always the same. So once I know how to conjugate haben and sein, I need to know how to build the Partizip zwei. So for regular verbs, that's pretty easy. All you have to know is that there's a GE prefix and every verb has a verb stem. And then to that verb stem, I have to add a T. Yeah. So for example, I do have the infinitive lieben, which means to love. My verb stem here is lieb without the en. So what I do is I'm adding ge before the verb stem lieb, and I'm adding a t after the verb stem lieb. And then my result is geliebt. And I know this is formed with haben, so the correct answer would be ich habe geliebt. I have loved. Now be careful, because if a verb stem ends in either an D, T, M, or N, then instead of just a T, I have to add ET. For example, the verb arbeiten. So here my verb stem ends in a T, and because I have a collision here, I have to add a vowel in between, and that's the vowel E. So I wouldn't say du hast gearbeitet, I would say du hast gearbeitet. So I'm adding et. Du hast gearbeitet, you have worked. For irregular verbs, I also add ge as a prefix basically to the verb stem, and then at the end, instead of a t, I'm adding en. So for example, sehen as the infinitive, my perfect would be ich habe gesehen. Or singen, du hast gesungen. So you see, sometimes you have to be careful. That's why I can't just say, oh, just keep the infinitive form, because sometimes with those irregular verbs, you do actually have a vowel change in the stem. So you see when you look at singen, there's an I in the verb stem, but then when you are building the partizip to for your perfect tense, then that I actually turns into the letter U. What are a few important things that you need to know when you're working with the perfect tense? That's perfect. Well, you have to build it with either haben or sein, and that needs to be conjugated. Then you have to use partizip to, which is at the end of the sentence, and that always has the same form, so you don't need to worry about that one. Now, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand when do I use haben and when do I use sein. So there are rules for that. One good thing to know is that there are more verbs in the German language that build the perfect tense with haben. The other ones that build the perfect tense with sein, they're often those verbs that show a movement, like a change of location or a condition. So for example, if I say, ich bin gelaufen, I have walked, yeah, that's a movement. Er ist gefahren, so he has driven. So again, that's a movement. Now the next one, be careful with that one. That one actually uses a separable verb. We have separable verbs in the German language, and there is a lecture available about that one as well. Separable verbs have a prefix in front of the verb stem, and here in front of the GE plus the verb stem. So that comes from the verb aufwachen, to wake up. And in that case, I keep the prefix and then I add my GE. But again, aufwachen, to wake up, is a change of a condition because first I was asleep and then I'm waking up. So here I'm also using sein to build my perfect tense.